you're going to write a check for it before you leave. The only distinction is whether you leave with the car or you don't leave with it, but you're going to pay for it. And the way this opt-out thing works, as I understand it, and I've heard other people make this same analysis, is the state can opt out of it, but they can't opt out of paying for it. Is that right, Wendy?
Yes, that's correct. So it really is a sham. It's a way of getting a good soundbite out there to make it people feel as if they could still be somehow in control, at least through their states. But the reality is they won't be in control. There is one purpose for passing this health care bill, and that is to put the national government in charge of our health care, to determine what treatment we can and cannot get.
I gotta take a theoretical question real quick. Okay. Theoretical question. Let's say a family realized they might be having a Down syndrome child. Does that mean the government is going to say whether this woman should abort the child or keep the child?
That's exactly what it means. What is that? Is that your take on it, Wendy?
That's right. And in fact, I mentioned how the bureaucrats will be in charge. That in fact has already been put in place, and that was done through the stimulus bill passed earlier part of this year. The stimulus bill created a commission to do comparative effectiveness, and what that means is they gather the research to figure out what treatments or what drugs are the most cost-effective, or at first they look at what's the most effective, but then they also add into that equation what's the most cost-effective. They've already set up that system. What the healthcare bill will do is then empower the bureaucrats to use that information to determine what treatments patients what treatments will be covered, what will be paid for, and which is almost the same thing then as saying what treatments the patients can and cannot have.
Right.
And that's across the board, elderly and everybody. Well, she's too old. We're not going to take care of this.
Whoever. I want to bring Michael back into this. Michael, I read a thing that you had written about this, what was called the Declaration of Debauchery. Mm-hmm. Basically, we all know, and you can look at the books that Planned Parenthood's put out. It's perfectly normal, and some of the other things that are just basically pornography directed toward children.
Absolutely.
That Planned Parenthood has this goal in mind of sexualizing our children, and they've done a very good job of it over the last 30 or 40 years. And what you're saying is under this health care program, this will accelerate.
Well, here's the thing. Planned Parenthood put out the International Planned Parenthood Federation put out this Declaration of Sexual Rights, which basically removes all barriers to any kind of sexual morality whatsoever, whether it's public or private. And that's really one of the most insidious things about the whole declaration, is that it's trying to publicize and make public every form of perversion known to man. And what they are doing through this declaration, they are going to other governments, and they're not necessarily proposing this as a legislative piece of work, but they're using it as a policy guideline. In fact, what they say is that they want to use this declaration to build relationships with governments, key policymakers, and other influential groups, and work with them to take action in support of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And so what they're going to do is, as they become closer and closer aligned with governments, they're going to be trying to impose this kind of philosophy or this kind of right on the entire civilization. And so if this health care bill, which contains that provision for that National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Resource Center, is given to Planned Parenthood, you can be absolutely certain that this declaration of debauchery is going to be used as a guide for implementing policy.
Well, let me tell you something, Michael. When I read about this in this report that you had done, the first thing that jumped to my mind was back when we were doing the undercover child predator investigation, showing that Planned Parenthood is protecting the men who rape children, and that's a fact. That's not even debatable anymore. They're doing it. One of the things that we stumbled across at that time was this kind of undercover movement that's going on primarily in the United States and Canada to eliminate all legal prohibitions against children having sex with adults. Right. They're calling it intergenerational sex. They have a new name for it. They don't call it pedophilia. They call it intergenerational sex. And we saw law review articles written saying that it was age discrimination to tell children they couldn't have sex with adults. The reverse of that is that adults couldn't have sex with children.
Right.
We're not trying to protect the adults, supposedly. We're supposed to be trying to protect the children.
Right.
This is going on underneath the radar screen, And they are openly stating that it should be legal for children of any age, 2, 3, 4 years old, to give consent to have sex with 40 or 50-year-old people.
And, absolutely, yeah. If you look at what the Declaration actually says, now going through it line by line, you're going to see little caveats where they say, well, you know, we want to protect children from rape, we want to protect children from sex trafficking, we want to protect children from pornography and all that stuff. But then what they do is they talk about these experiences, this right to experience sexuality, and they put in there a line about how attaining the sexual pleasure is evolving according to their capacity, which means that once a child decides it is ready, he or she, to experience some sort of sexual experience or engage in some sort of sexual experience, will be allowed to, and it'll be their right. And so when you have seventh graders and fifth graders that are having sex with their teachers, if it should be determined that they decided to do it, that's perfectly acceptable.
And which we know there's an epidemic of that going on around the country.
So this is just a license to do it. So I had sex with him, you can't arrest me, and, you know, all of that.
Well, and one of the articles, one of the law review articles we found in which they're advocating this the release of prohibitions on intergenerational sexual activity was, they're saying there's been medical studies documenting that children as young as 18 months old can enjoy having sex with adults.
Oh, is NAMBLA behind this?
We got a case going on right now in Fayetteville,
right?
Where they caught this guy. This little girl's missing, 5 years old, and this is in the black community. Everybody was, black folks are mad about, outraged over this. A little child was missing. They caught the guy taking. They found the child later dead, of course. But the way they caught it with the guy that kidnapped this child, he was taking her to the motel room.
Right.
And you see this picture of this cute little girl, 5 years old, with her arms around this guy, and she's looking all at peace and content, and he's taking her into this hotel room.
And the mother
is the one that actually sold his child for child trafficking. This kind of mess would even make something like that legal.
Right. This would be legal under this.
That would make this. Yeah. This is horrible. I mean, this is a mess. Planned Parenthood need to be ashamed of themselves.
Johnny,
Planned Parenthood needs to be dissolved.
Planned Parenthood needs to be put in jail. These people are pedophiles. Mm-hmm. We proved it with the Child Predator Project, and all people need to do is go out here and start studying the same things that we studied and find out what they're doing behind the scenes and what people like Michael and Wendy are bringing out here. They're doing the research and exposing these people.
Yeah, I got some friends named Gorski that called me from Virginia Beach, and they are so mad. And they've taken Marfa 21 because I told them what to do with that thing. Planned Parenthood on Newtown Road in Virginia Beach is building a multi-million-dollar facility there too, right across from an African-American community center. Right across. They're going after these teens. They're going right in there. But I tell you what, when Marfa's 21 was shown to a black deacon, they gave it to him. And the fellow said, I just loaned it to him for a day. He said, Brother John, you got to send me another. He said, because the deacon said, you can't have this back. We got too many other folks to show this to.
Well, we're going to be talking about Marfa 21 here in just a little bit. But this is, you know, the American people are asleep at the switch. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring Wendy back in because Wendy's from this area. And I don't think Dallas-Fort Worth is any different than any other part of the country when it comes to this sort of thing. But Wendy, I'm sure you can remember from your times living in Dallas, if you went out on the streets of downtown Dallas right now and told people and showed them the documentation that you're not just making this stuff up, there'd be more of them concerned about whether Dallas is going to beat Washington this weekend in the NFL.
And they'd lock Wendy up for saying such things.
That's exactly right. Not just Dallas. I think anywhere in the country that common sense still reigns.
Right. This country has become anesthetized because of its own self-pleasures and entertainment and sports and all these things.
Well, we're going to wake up. If things don't radically change, if there isn't a supernatural miracle that happens in the next 30 to 60 days, we're going to wake up sometime in 2010 with a radically different America. An America we will not recognize. It will look more like Eastern Europe.
Troy, I think it's already happened. I don't think we'd recognize just what's happened in the last 8 or 9 months since January. Mm-hmm. Do you realize if you, I said this to somebody the other day, if you had gone back, let's say 50 years, and you had told people, here is a list of things, here's a guy that's going to run for president in 2008. all right, just 50 years from now. So you're making this in 1958. And you say, oh, by the way, he's black. Here's the things he believes and that he says he's going to do. There would have been more, even in a time in the 1950s or the 1940s or 1930s, there would have been exponentially more people who would have said that person will never be president because of his positions than they would have said he'll never be president because he's black. Exponentially more that would have said that. But here we are. I think that what these people are doing is setting up a vigilante America where people are going to start standing up saying, well, if I believe in the law, in the rule of law, but if the law is not even going to protect a 18-month-old baby from having sex with a 40-year-old man, I'll protect the baby.
You betcha.
You know, you bring up a very interesting point, and actually, just to bring that point home, I want to read you this one section that was in the Sexual Rights Declaration from Planned Parenthood. They actually want to protect any individual who has a history, alleged or real, from whatever sexual history they have. And what they say is this framework of non-discrimination, and that's the key word because it all falls under non-discrimination. They say this framework of non-discrimination prohibits any exclusion or restriction on the basis of sexual history or behavior, real or imputed. And then they go on to say, of all human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. So if you're a sexual predator or if you're a child molester, they want to make sure that no one is allowed to discriminate against you for whatever job you may want, including working at a daycare center, from discrimination.
It's unbelievable. But again, we're out of time, and I want to repeat what we said here a couple of times. You're never going to stop all of this stuff by nipping around the edges of this thing and saying, okay, well, we'll put restrictions in here and restrictions there. The only way to stop this is to stop this nonsense outright. No federal takeover of the healthcare system of America by these people. None. Zero. Wendy, I want to thank you for being with us, and you too, Michael, and we might have you back on later on. But you guys are doing a great job of exposing this stuff, and I want to very much encourage you to continue on.
Thank you much.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. God bless.
It's, the American people better wake up to what's going on here.
Well, the only evil in America will be sitting around this table. That'll be the only thing that can be called evil.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
If this thing passes.
Thanks, guys. Now let's check in with Father Frank and Janet Morana. Father Frank?
Thanks, Mark. Friends, good to be with you again on LifeTalk. Are you a freedom rider for the unborn? That's what we're going to talk about today in our segment with Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Janet, in 1961, in the Civil Rights Movement, 13 people got on a bus in Washington, D.C., half African-American, half white. They got on the bus and they wanted to take a ride. They wanted to go to New Orleans, and the purpose of their ride